each and every year in fantasy football, there are names that you just wish you would have stashed. This year, it's probably the Rico Dowdles, the Aronde Gadsden. Well, that's the entire point of today's video. We want to help you beat the breakout, and Gadsden is a name that we suggested to stash multiple weeks before the breakout. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you guys who have been watching. Now, the following names should already be rostered. If you guys are in smaller leagues, I'm not going to spend any time, wasting my breath on them. You will already know these names, and these guys should be prioritized. Bam Knight, one name I want to talk about quickly. Great matchup this week. He's a great spot start. All right, I just want to quickly talk to you guys about a couple trades that could be happening in the NFL in the next 10 or so days. The trade deadline is November 4th. So if there are trades in the NFL, it will happen within the next week, basically. All right, now here are some names that could be moved. Breece Hall, probably the hottest name in fantasy football that could potentially be moved. We'll talk about what that could mean in fantasy football here in a second. With the running backs. Kirk Cousins. Now, this is only really relevant for Superflex leagues, but maybe he's worth rostering in Superflex leagues for the next 2 weeks. Jacoby Myers could be on the move. And who could that impact in Las Vegas? Maybe Trey Tucker, Jack Besh. We'll talk about that. Rashid Shaheed, unfortunately, I don't think that's really going to impact anything in New Orleans. Calvin Ridley. Now, if Calvin Ridley's moved, there is a big potential league winner out there in some of your waiver wires. And David Njoku, obviously Harold Fannin would be the big beneficiary there, right? We're going to go position by position. I'm going to rank my favorite stashes. You can actually check out the time codes here if you want to go to a specific part of the video. Let's start off with running backs. And Isaiah Davis is one of those names that he needs to be rostered at this point. We've been talking about him multiple times in the stash video each and every week. And obviously a lot of that has been attached to a potential Breece Hall trade. Last week against the Cincinnati Bengals, Isaiah Davis had 33 snaps compared to 40 for Breece Hall. We saw 7 carries, 5 targets. He was very involved, not only on the ground, but also through the air. Isaiah Davis ends up with 15.9 fantasy points, 6.5 coming on the ground, 9.5 coming through the air, caught 5 catches for 44 yards. Very involved. And I think it was not only like the Jets showcasing how good Breece Hall still is because they want to trade him, but also showcasing to the fan base, hey, Isaiah Davis can be a fine starter for us if we do decide to make this move. He would be a flexible option each week if a Breece Hall trade was to go down. And it's good to know that he was also the highest graded offensive player for the Jets last week against those Bengals. Okay, next player I want to talk about here is Tank Bigsby. Now, this is just a precautionary move. If you're out there and you own a Saquon Barkley or you need a desperation play at running back next week, Tank Bigsby should be rostered. Now, the good news for Saquon Barkley owners is, according to the Eagles, the injury is not believed to be serious to his groin. However, groin injuries, they can linger. And the only thing that really heals them is time. The good news for a Breece Hall is the Eagles do have their bye week here in week number 9. However, we did see last week Tank Bigsby most likely to take on that role if there is no Saquon Barkley. He had 9 carries, 104 yards, showed to be a very effective runner behind the Eagles offensive line. So, if there is a potential for Saquon to miss time, Bigsby's probably going to be the name that you're starting each and every week. Next name I want to talk about here is Dylan Sampson. Another injury did go down to a running back that we love. That is Quinshon Judkins. He suffered an AC joint sprain in his shoulder. He is considered day-to-day. And, just like the Eagles, the Browns are on bye this week, so it couldn't have happened at a better time for those two running backs. However, a shoulder is really difficult. I think you guys need to think about that for a second. It's really difficult because this is what Bucky Irving's dealing with at the moment, right? That shoulder, you need to be able to take a ton of pressure, a ton of hits, a ton of contact as a running back. You're probably taking more, pain to your shoulder than almost any other area of your body, if not your legs. So there could be a chance that Judkins could miss time. Obviously, this is the injury where you can see the defender for New England just putting his entire weight on his shoulder. So I do think it's something that we should monitor. Dylan Sampson started for this team in weeks 1 and 2, averaged, over 13 points per game in that time, involved in the air, on the ground. So he would be the next guy up in that backfield. Okay, let's talk about Bashul Tutin. Now, this has everything to do with the fact that the bye week has just happened for the Jaguars here. So he averaged 7 yards per carry in week 7, 4.4 yards per carry. He's been very efficient as well the 2 weeks before the Jags went out on their bye. 7 yards per carry and 4.5 yards per carry. He's got a ton of juice. We can all see it. If this team has plans for him to have a bigger impact in this lineup, it will happen after the bye week. That's typically when you see that post-bye rookie bump. The next player I'm actually very intrigued by. Genuinely, I think this is one of the more underrated pickups. That is Samaje Perine. Now, Perine was completely uninvolved in this offense at the beginning of the year, but with the Joe Flacco introduction to this offense, you're starting to see a very serious role for him. 37% of the snaps in week 7, 42% of the snaps in week 8. He had 9 carries, 94 yards of the touchdown. And, this is back-to-back weeks now where we are seeing Samaje Perine get almost equivalent work to Chase Brown. Now, that's obviously concerning for any Chase Brown owners out there, but we have to face reality head on. This is still Chase Brown's backfield, but Samaje Perine is starting to really get on his tails. It's closing in on a 50-50 split. You can see last week, Samaje Perine, 25 snaps compared to 32 for Chase Brown, 10 total opportunities compared to 15 for Chase Brown. So he's starting to, kind of get at his heels a little bit. And if this turns into a split backfield, there is some potential value there. And obviously, if Chase Brown goes down with an injury, Perine could probably get a lot of work with this team. All right, next I want to quickly talk about Ollie Gordon and Jaden Blue. The only reason we're mentioning them is because they have shown in limited action. You saw last week versus Atlanta. We saw Ollie Gordon get 11 total opportunities, 4.6 yards per carry. Jaden Blue, we saw last week, get a couple touches. The week before, get a couple touches. These are two guys that are in a position where if the guy ahead of them were to go down with injuries, they would step into instant opportunities. That's the way I view those two running backs there. Okay, let's talk about Keaton Mitchell. Now, Keaton Mitchell is one of these surprise names that could potentially be moved at the deadline. We've heard a lot of people talk about him being on the trade block. He's a very effective player, always, putting up those explosive plays. 10.75 yards per carry last week versus the Chicago Bears, only 11% of the snaps. But even if you go back to his rookie year, you saw plenty of games where he was just so effective, so efficient, dynamic, explosive. And then obviously he went down with that serious injury. And now he's just kind of finally starting to find his footing. If he is traded to another team, there could be serious value there. Even if he takes over the Justice Hill role in deeper formats, there could be value. Sean Tucker is only a guy that you want to pick up in deep formats. There is potential for Bucky Irving to be back next week, after their bye, and his value would completely go away. But if Bucky Irving is going to miss more time, or if the injury is more serious than they're letting us on, Sean Tucker could have serious value in a very good offense. Devin Neal, this is only deep leagues. Devin Neal, 46% of the snaps last time out. He was used more in the air than on the ground. But of course, if Alvin Kamara goes down, he's the next man up. Although I'm not really sure there is really any true value in that Saints backfield, unfortunately. Okay, let's move on to the wide receiver position. And I'd like to start off with Chimere DK, and I could be saying that wrong. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure it's DK. That's how you say it. I could be wrong. But let's talk about DK. He was a great prospect, by the way, coming out of Florida. At least as an athlete, he tested really well. He had an elite composite speed grade, 4.34 40-yard dash, elite composite explosion grade as well. And you're kind of seeing that as they're working him in and out of the slot. Ever since they let go of Tyler Lockett, which they did in the last couple of weeks, you're seeing a huge uptick in DK's production. Now, you can see in week 7, for example, 57% of the snaps. That was a career high for him. He had a career high in receiving yards as well, got into the end zone. Then in week 8, completely fully deployed, 89% of the snaps, had 8 targets, caught 7 of them for 93 yards. We're talking about a team with the Titans that are going to be down pretty much every single game. And you're seeing a potential breakout for DK right in front of your eyes. He needs to be rostered, honestly, at this point. And I know a lot of people are talking about Calvin Ridley. Well, Calvin Ridley is a potential trade target. And by the way, DK plays in the slot. So that doesn't really impact Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is more going to impact Alec Aomana rather than Chimere DK. So I definitely think you guys need to take him seriously at this point, right? 1 game's a fluke. 2 games is a trend. What is 3 games? I think we need to take him a little bit more seriously. All right, Christian Watson was on our Honey Trap segment on our waiver wire video this week, but I do think he is worth a stash, a free ad at this point. He had 56% of the snaps, caught 4 catches for 85 yards. Now, the reason I'm not very high on Christian Watson is because there's just too many names in this backfield, in this wide receiver room. You've got Romeo Doubs. They're using Savion Williams in certain packages. Matthew Golden is a rookie. Jaden Reed and Dontavion Wicks could be back healthy at some point. So I just don't think you're going to be able to trust him at any point, and that's why I'm really hesitant to really go hard after him. Let's talk about Tez Johnson next. Tez Johnson has been, incredibly effective on an offense that keeps losing wide receivers. So he should definitely be stashed. And the reason I'm bringing him up is because they do have their bye week in week 9. If anybody is to drop him, then you should go out there and pick him up because he could be a flexible name each and every week. Let's talk about Alec Pierce. Now, Alec Pierce is one of these names that, he's actually Jameson Williams with the safe floor. Like, they're constantly using him down the field. He actually leads the league in receiving, catches of 30 or more yards. He leads the league in that category. He's the deep threat for the Colts. Not as consistent when Josh Downs is around, obviously, but a guy that you can seriously consider putting into your flex, on a desperate situation. Let's talk about the rookie wide receivers in Houston. Now, obviously, it's difficult for Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel to be reliable if Nico Collins is healthy, and I do anticipate him being back from that concussion. But I want to talk to you, why would Noel and Higgins be worth rostering? Well, for Jalen Noel, he could take over the Christian Kirk role. Christian Kirk hasn't been able to stay healthy. He hasn't been effective. You're seeing Jalen Noel consistently stretch the field, be effective out of the slot. That's where they primarily use him. Now, for Jaden Higgins, there was always a role for a wide receiver too. And you saw after the bye week, he had a career high in snaps, but he just wasn't heavily targeted. Now, obviously, without Nico Collins, he led that team not only in snaps, but also in targets. I mean, pretty much every single metric for the Houston Texans, he led that backfield, or that wide receiver room, He led them in targets, routes run, snaps. So obviously, they want to see Jaden Higgins take another step. Now, if Nico Collins is there, their value is going to be slashed. That's why they're not higher on this list. But still, there's room for another wide receiver to be relevant. And I think that's probably Jaden Higgins or Jalen Noel. Okay, let's talk about Brandon Ayuk. There were some reports that we could see Ayuk come back to practice this week. That ended up not being the case, but we will see a Brandon Ayuk on the field playing for the 49ers in the next 3 weeks. I'm pretty much comfortable saying that at this point. In the next 3 weeks, he will be out there. I do think he is worth stashing at this point. There's not a single receiver in San Francisco that can stay healthy. There's not a single guy that is dominating, that is separating himself. Probably Ayuk, who we've seen in the past be super effective, super efficient, super explosive. He's probably the guy that I would bet on when he is healthy moving forward. And they just need someone to step up. So why not stash a name like Brandon Ayuk at this point? Okay, earlier we talked about the fact that Jacoby Myers is one of the bigger trade targets and rumors in the last couple weeks. If he were to be moved on from, then Trey Tucker and Jack Besh in deep formats should definitely be considered. Jack Besh is a great player. We just need to get him more volume at this point. Jalen Coker showed some signs of life. We do love Jalen Coker. He will play out of the slot. So we could see him get a bigger and bigger role. He only played 66% of the snaps last week. That could grow to more to the 80% range moving forward. So in deeper leagues, he should be taken seriously. And Trey Harris, look, he's a good prospect. I just don't see him ever having a consistent role with the amount of weapons in Los Angeles. But this is more for like our dynasty people out there. If he's for some reason out there on waivers, he should definitely be rostered at this point. We're going to jump into some more stashes, but just quickly, there is a free feature on the Flock Fantasy site called the My Teams feature. That allows you to see all of the expert consensus on your fantasy league, rankings, etc. Now, if you want to gain access to that completely free, then create a free account on the Flock site using my promo code LAND, L-A-N-D. That is just one of the many great features you're going to get. Just a secret weapon to help you out here in your fantasy football season. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the quarterback position. Joe Flacco. He was traded to the Bengals, and that was before week 6 versus Green Bay. Since that point, the man is averaging well over 20 points per game. I mean, it makes sense because he's targeting all these elite weapons in this offense. He's basically giving you Joe Burrow, but his last name is Flacco instead. That's basically what he's giving you for fantasy football. So if you don't have a name that you can start every week, take him seriously at this point, guys. Sam Darnold's coming back from the bye, and this week he gets the Washington Commanders. That defense is absolute cheeks, so he has a chance to have a really good game if you're looking for someone this week. Trevor Lawrence faces the Raiders, another good matchup for him. J.J. McCarthy, I know that might sound silly, but I do think he should be stashed. It's the same, look, I understand the reservations, but keep in mind, in week 1 versus the Bears, he showed plenty of promise, 23 points. He showed the rushing upside, 25 or more rushing yards in each of his starts, and now he gets to throw to Jefferson, Jordan Addison. So he's definitely worth considering. This could be the next Jackson Dart, really, is what we're looking at. Now, for super flex leagues, Tyrod Taylor and Tyler Shuck should be looked at. Again, only in super flex formats where you're desperate for a quarterback too. Shuck is going to get the start for the Saints moving forward. Tyrod Taylor, who knows? He might be able to get the start for the Jets after the bye week, but those guys should be considered. Let's jump into the tight ends here. Starting off with Colson Loveland, who last week for the Chicago Bears, obviously no Komet, he finally got featured in this offense, and it was awesome to see. He led all tight ends in snaps with 51. He led all tight ends in routes run with 32. He had 5 targets. That's a pretty decent amount in a really good offense. Well, as long as Caleb Williams can be competent. 6.8 fantasy points, a career high for him as well. 3 catches, 38 yards. There are plenty of signs for a first-round pick that are trending in the positive direction. We love to see it. Okay, how about Mason Taylor, who was one of my desperation plays in our nuclear video last week. He ends up with 5 catches, 34 yards, and a touchdown. It was a little bit of a fluke, but he is a weapon as a rookie that could continue to get his role increasing. Evan Ingram, he's been a consistent floor at the tight end position each and every week. And then K. Dotton, a lot of people will drop him, obviously because of the bye week, but if you need an option at tight end, you can go ahead and pick him up. Without Mike Evans for the majority of the fantasy season, he's a decent streaming option each and every single week. Before we jump into defensive streamers, I gotta tell y'all, I'm riding on an absolute high right now with DFS because I just finished first in the Quick 6 Super Slam contest last week. You can see the lineup I deployed. Now, this week, I want to win again. So here's the lineup that I'm rocking with. We've got names like Chase and Puka, Kyron, Swift, Metcalf, Etienne. I like their matchups. I want to get Puka back into my lineups. You can create your own lineup. All you got to do is download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND. I'll match your deposit up to $50, and then you're going to get my week 9 rankings completely free. And by the way, FastDraft is doing a special deal this week where if you roster a Tennessee Titan, you got to get unique with your lineups, but if you roster a Titan, they're going to give you $10 free credit. So basically another free entry. It's spooky season with Halloween. You got to roster one of the worst offenses in the NFL, but it's basically a free entry. So you can check that out in the pinned comment if you want to support the show and have some fun. Okay, I want to quickly talk to you guys about streamers for defense, but not this week. This is for next week. So this is where you can beat the waiver wire in week 10 by stashing these defenses if you want some great options. For example, the Broncos face the Raiders. Great option there. The Panthers versus the Saints is very sneaky. I really like that pickup. The Bills are at the Dolphins. Great option there for the Bills. They're facing the Chiefs this week. Nobody's going to be rostering them, so go pick them up so you can face the Dolphins next week. The Ravens are at the Vikings. I have them lower on the list because I just don't trust the Ravens defense. The Browns are at the Jets, and the Jets are at the versus the Browns. So those are some other desperation plays you could consider. But guys, I appreciate you watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Nothing but love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.